Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is Monday, May 24th, 2021, and this is episode 19A. This is kind of going to be a fun episode because we have, just this morning, had the drop of the first Eternals teaser trailer. We've only seen little tiny little clips of things before, which we can of course know based on how Marvel Disney does things, that was very well selected little clips that we've seen. And now we finally have a little bit of a teaser trailer, so we have just a little bit more to work with and theorize off of, and I am going to be doing that for a good chunk of this episode. So we're going to go ahead and start with that this week, before going into, hopefully for not too long, although based on what I'm going to be saying, I could go on about this for a very long time, Army of the Dead, the Zack Snyder movie on Netflix, because it was very bad. And you can actually go through the factual reasons and ways that you can prove this is bad based on him using lazy writing tropes and just really bad stuff. So I'm going to go over that kind of, hopefully a little bit briefly, before we finally get into the regular weekly comic book pull list, of which there is a lot of really fun stuff to talk about for this coming week. That's going to be things that are going to be coming out for DC Comics tomorrow, the 25th of May, and for everything else the 26th of May, which is Wednesday like usual. So go ahead and wait around for that if you would like. I will go and start with the Eternals, because I'm a little bit excited about talking about that this morning, and then we'll get ahead into everything else. But if that's what you're here for, I get to Army of the Dead about 42 and a half minutes in, and then on to the comic book pull list about 49 and a half minutes in. So go ahead and skip there if those are the things that you're looking for. For the Eternals trailer, now I have not watched anyone else's reactions to it. I haven't looked up any articles for Easter eggs or anything like that. It's just been me and what I kind of very basically, and by that I mean in a very basic way, know about the Eternals as characters, stuff that I know from the Eternals comic that's going on right now, and then just stuff that I know about how stories tend to be written. So I'll make some assumptions. They may end up completely false, but that's, half the fun of it is the speculation. So I'll go through. A couple weeks ago, I know I went when Disney came out with that, or I guess Marvel came out with that Phase 4 kind of, what do they call it, sizzle reel? I had gone over the characters that are appearing in Eternals then, and I'll go over them again now, with what little more context we may have, and just some other things that I didn't mention before then. So we'll start with basically. My general thought on this is I had to watch it a couple of times to kind of get a good picture, to make sure that what I was kind of feeling about it was pretty sound and accurate. And I think I've got a pretty good idea of this. I'm basically convinced Marvel has a solid plan behind this movie. At this point, there is literally an eternal level of history to be covered about these characters, to get to know these characters. But based on what we just saw in this just 2-minute teaser, I definitely think that they found the formula for introducing us to and getting us to be interested in and potentially love these characters quickly and in a way that is not forced, that is kind of a natural flow. I guess I have looked a little bit at people's reactions on Twitter, very briefly. Actually, I think I looked at people's reactions before I even watched the trailer myself. What I got from that, basically, it is Twitter, so take that how you will. A lot of people are talking about the snap, of course, the various various alien invasions, etc., things that happen in the MCU that the Eternals were around for but must have just ignored. My thoughts on that, I figure they probably aren't really affected by it, so they see this as just another phase in the life of humans and life on Earth. Maybe in their minds, maybe humans will die out and they'll continue to watch whatever is left of the planet. That's just kind of their role, and you see that a little bit you kind of get that understanding about what those people are in the trailer. Not individually necessarily yet, and not very specifically either, but you can kind of understand that their mission overall is to watch over and kind of guide humanity where need be, but not necessarily interfere. It's basically said outright with the narration through the trailer, but you also get the understanding that they are quite removed from the human experience, no matter how much they may walk through the humans, because of their kind of godly way of arriving and doing that walking through the humans. There is curiosity, obviously, yes, and some clearly more than others, but they definitely do not consider themselves to be the same as humans, and I think we're going to have a lot of variation in opinions on the humans and what to do about the humans among the different Eternals. And they definitely, Marvel is definitely gonna, I can't decide if they're alluding that the Eternals are the, ancient aliens kind of things, or if they're just using that to, I guess it's kind of both. They're kind of using the idea of how, it was aliens and stuff that came and taught us water irrigation and helped build the pyramids and the Great Wall and all that stuff, that includes alien conspiracies. They're basically using all of those ideas to explain the Eternals. That's what they are. That's what all those theories and conspiracies come from, is the Eternals actually doing that stuff. And if I had to guess, I would say that some of the characters who involve, I guess some of the characters definitely involve themselves more with Earth life, and some stay away. For example, in the trailer, you can see Kingo, which is Kumail's character. He is a Bollywood dancer or actor of some kind, which obviously surely means he'd have a closer connection to the goings-on of the humans. And you see Gemma Chan's Cersei, she's got a couple of clips walking through the humans through various eras, and she doesn't necessarily start looking confused as time goes on, but she definitely starts looking more detached from things going on. Her face kind of goes from great admiration and love to kind of extreme trepidation and surprise at what the world has kind of become, and so we can assume from her that she, while we see her teaching them about water and irrigation, thousands of years ago, millions, whatever it is, she clearly doesn't have the kind of deeper connection that maybe Kingo will have, because he is actively living, dancing, working, doing whatever it is that he does, seemingly, presumably, I have to guess right now, fully among the humans. We also see the character Sprite talking about the Avengers, but then when Icarus suggests joining the Avengers and leading them, everyone at the table laughs, which is, I assume, showing what kind of a ridiculous idea that is. Again, that he must be one of the ones who is less involved with the world, which is why that would be a funny joke to them, as he's not the kind of type to step up and make that kind of change. And as I go through this, you're going to notice that some of these characters are very much tropes of the good old standard superhero team archetypes that we see in like every superhero team. But one credit I do have to give the Eternals, for the most part, through their creation, are more or less different in their costuming, at least, than that. You have the Superman type, you have the Wonder Woman type, you have, it's the various tropes that we see that appear throughout superhero teams, and you do get a little bit of that here, so you will notice that as I talk through this. This may be a touch of a jumble. I'm hoping not. I just got there are certain things that I kind of have leaning on more for theories than others, so I might repeat myself a little bit, go around in a circle. But we're going to start off with Black Knight, who is, of course, played by Kit Harington. I don't think he needs that much introduction these days. He's, Jon Stark from Game of Thrones. He was in some other things. He's been pretty steadily typecast as a, warrior type through olden times of various eras. So having him cast as Black Knight Earth or human name, I guess, regular name, alter ego, whatever. Dude name Dane Whitman is the Black Knight from the comics that we primarily know. That is who he is playing. My first thought about Black Knight being in this, there's the joke about Icarus maybe joining and leading the Avengers. There's no way that's going to happen. If I had to theorize out of this, if anyone here is going to lead the Avengers, it's probably going to be Cersei. However, Black Knight, Dane Whitman, did lead the Avengers in the comics for an amount of time. This takes place after a Defenders arc that I actually am pretty familiar with, featuring old school Doctor Strange characters like Miss Victoria Blessing, Hellcat, Valkyrie, and Clea, who of course, a number of these are some of my favorite characters in comics. Eventually, through time, after all that stuff happens, after the Avengers go off and kill the Kree Supreme Intelligence, Captain America leaves the team, and then it is Black Knight's Dane Whitman who picks up the leadership role at that point. He becomes romantically involved with both Cersei and Crystal of the Inhumans, which really leads me to believe very easily that he'll be a thorn in Icarus's side, and he'll draw Gemma Chan's Cersei away from Icarus for probably the first time in all of their lives, which are quite lengthy. Plus, the only scene, well, not the only scene, one of two scenes that we have of him in the trailer, he is alongside her standing off on this hill. They seem to be watching a thunderstorm, and people are heading towards the thunderstorm on a hill like they're entranced, or possibly they're just curious about it, or, spitballing real hard here, is this Icarus arriving to beat his ass? That would be pretty funny to have put that in the trailer, like it's some, villain thing, and then just Icarus showing up jealous as hell. This probably not what's gonna happen. I just, like I said, spitballing. One thing that I am super curious about with the Black Knight here is how are they going to make the Black Knight work in a modern superhero movie? And what I mean by that is his physical costume. Some things, as we've seen here and there throughout comic book movie history, some things just don't translate well on the screen, and I can't see his actual medieval knight armor working too well in a modern setting, especially as a public hero figure. And then also just after, I know I mentioned before, I read that Defenders arc that happens before he basically becomes the leader of the Avengers. In that Defenders arc, he is turned to stone. It's this whole thing, the sword was cursed. The sword of the Black Knight is like the mantle. It gets passed down from person to person through the years, but after he had it for, whatever amount of time this was, it gets cursed and turns him into stone, and that's where this Defenders arc that, I'm familiar with him from, that's what I've read of him, is basically just that. That all happens, and so after that, once that's fixed and he's no longer made of stone, he gets a replacement that's basically a lightsaber to, like, fake the effects of the actual Black Knight sword that he can't use anymore. And then that's when he goes back to the Avengers. They kill the Kree Supreme Intelligence, and he becomes the de facto, is what everything seems to say, leader of the Avengers. It's but way back when, but it's something definite. It's all the things definitely worth thinking about. And then we have, of course, Richard Madden as Icarus. He is another something Stark. He's another Stark. It was Jon Snow, and he was something Stark. Gosh, it's been a while. Game of Thrones premiered like 10 years ago or something, isn't that right? Anyway, so Richard Madden was playing Icarus, another former Game of Thrones cast member, and they are, it's going to be funny. It is kind of relevant to talk about Game of Thrones because it's kind of funny because they're both in it, and they played at, to their knowledge, I guess it would be half brothers, basically just brothers. So while Richard Madden was only in it like season 1, maybe part of season 2, before he bit the dust brutally, they were brothers and they were very close. So it's gonna be kind of interesting if I'm right with my whole theory here that they're gonna be having this love triangle with Cersei at the center. It's gonna be kind of funny to see the two of them. I don't know, maybe they're gonna be like super close and this is just gonna be the one fault of their relationship is the thing with Cersei. Who knows? Or they're gonna hate each other. I don't know. We're gonna see. But anyway, Icarus is played by Richard Madden. He is basically the equivalent of Superman with his power set. He's got the, laser vision, super strength, everything like that. From the trailer, we can kind of see that he and Cersei have clearly been lovers for most of history. They do a pretty good job of flipping through scenes, whether that's going to be the way that plays out in the movie or whether they sped through it really quick for the trailer for a quick explanation. I don't know. We'll find out when it happens, but they definitely made that super clear. These two have been together for pretty much all of history, and as I said, I have no doubt that will be tested by the Black Knight. Icarus makes the comment in the trailer about he maybe will lead the Avengers. My theory is that this scene is happening very early on in the movie, before they've encountered whatever the driving force of the plot is going to be, the villain, whatever. And everybody laughs at that comment because I imagine he isn't one of the group to be super involved in the modern world. He's not really known for that in the comics either. It's not really his thing. Gemma Chan is Cersei. She has, of course, been in some really great stuff. She's a fantastic actor. She was in Crazy Rich Asians, also Captain Marvel, but she was playing somebody of a different, entire alien race. So I think we can kind of move along from that. We already pretty much know that she is going to kill it at this role. And based on my assumptions I have already talked about, I keep saying it over and over again, I have a feeling that she's going to be, a standard kind of soft on the outside and maybe even mostly on the inside too, but hard as diamond at the very center, by which I mean she's going to be very soft, appear very soft, quiet, maybe even appear to be weak at some times, but when truly tested, she will have strength enough to destroy whatever enemies she comes across. And like I said, my theory is that she may end up actually being the person who goes on to be in the Avengers, if not leading them, because she was on the Avengers for a while. I think in the 90s is what it was. She was actually if I recall, in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, she was actually one of the ones who Thanos snapped. I can kind of picture that page, and I believe she was on it, because I remember reading that years ago, and that was my first encounter with her I'm pretty sure that was my first encounter with her in the comic. I knew about her, but I'd never, read her name actually in a comic. And I think that was also tying into Game of Thrones again, my first time seeing how her name was spelled. And I was like, oh, so it's not spelled like Cersei from Game of Thrones, okay. Which, it's all very, dark. The name has kind of been tainted a bit. But anyway, if Cersei ends up falling in love or falling for Dane Whitman, he and Icarus are no doubt going to fight. And I imagine in that scenario, she would be the one to kind of just put her foot down and break that up. Her outfit in the movie, they have a nice little lineup of the cast in their official costumes, I presume, with, Ajak at the center and everything. Everybody looks pretty good for the most part, but for whatever reason, well, I do have a guess on this, but Cersei looks the most unlike her comic of the group, who are mostly well translated. And my theory about why that is, if you haven't, she has a couple of different outfits. I think she had a red and black one for a while, or possibly I'm thinking of the Wasp. It's possible. But I think currently in the comics, she has kind of a blackish purple outfit that is it has gaps and mesh and stuff in it. It's really cool looking. It's not overboard in any way. It's a really cool looking outfit, but looking at stuff I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but based on my knowledge of what she's worn in the past, her outfit is just like this weird green dress thing. And I don't think it looks, and it's the one that I don't think looks a thing like anything she wore in the comic, but I guess that, that's fine. And of course, while I'm on the subject, just really quickly, they are definitely using the casting of this Eternals movie as reason to take advantage of a new, I guess you could say, cast of Eternals in or their new different appearances in the comic. The Eternals were very, white in the past, and they've with the movie they've changed up some races and genders of characters. So they've taken that opportunity, and with the current Karen Gillan Assad Ribic Eternals series, which I definitely recommend, they have taken some of those liberties and done that in the comic as well. They've kind of made that as like an excuse, taking that opportunity. But that being said, they have done a phenomenal job of explaining why that's happened in the comic. It's not just something that, oh no, they just woke up one day and they were like this, or writing off all of the past to kind of take advantage of this new look in the future. It's nothing like that. They actually have an explanation. This is basically they die and they can come back however they want to look, and that's it. It's a pretty simple explanation. I like it. Then of course we have Angelina Jolie playing Athena. My husband and I were talking this morning how it was such a relief to discover that she was not playing Cersei. Cersei is kind of seen as the female head of the Eternals in the comics, just generally. Whereas in the movie, obviously they've changed that to Ajax, and they've changed Ajax to being female, Salma Hayek. And Angelina Jolie is actually Athena, which I think is really cool. She has a past of fantasy and action movies of various types, so I think this will work out pretty well. I actually just watched her last night, and last night was literally, I watched this last night. I had no idea this trailer was going to drop. I watched her in that movie that's on HBO. I can't actually remember what it's called now, but she's the firefighter who works for the Forest Service in like some flyover state or something. Someone's gonna hate me for having said that, but it was a really good movie. It was a not a horror movie. It's a it was the kind where you sit there and you're like on the edge of your seat. I wasn't planning to talk about this that much, but I did have one thing, if I could be petty for just a second. One thing I had an issue with in the movie is that it's not Angelina Jolie's fault at all. She's running through the forest doing her job. It's a burning forest. All the while she has great hair and makeup and her skin looks flawless. I'm sorry, that's just not realistic with people in that scenario. She did good, so I have to give her credit with that being handled all very well. Athena looks to be like a pretty good translation from the comics, if I'm being honest, at least from as far as the Assad Ribic art in the current series goes. It looks very, very accurate to probably the best of anybody's costume, even Icarus, who his costume is almost a direct translation aside from a slight change in coloring, which I'm sure they did to make it not look like cartoony bullshit. But Athena here, her pretty much white and gold themed look with a little bit of a touch of red in there, looks very, very accurate to the current comic series. She is like a warrior character, and they touch on that in the trailer for a short little bit. So I imagine that we'll see a lot more of that for her going forward. And her sword looks to be kind of made of the same sort of magic and stuff that they all kind of use in their own ways for whatever, their powers must be. We have Salma Hayek is playing Ajax, who is in the comic, of course, a traditionally male character. I guess she's probably going to be the leader of the Eternals. In the comic, Ajax is from a different, I believe it's from the Polar Eternals. is who Ajax is from, is where Ajax is from. And it looks like they've done a pretty good job with the costume, obviously taking a lanky dude to a woman in a dress is quite a translation, but she is the only one with a like helmet or crown or anything, and if you look at Ajax in the comic, he also has a funky headdress. And they did a pretty good job. They added some color to it. They made it look, good for on screen and not ridiculous comic stuff. So I think they did pretty good with that. I'm very interested in seeing why they cast Salma Hayek as Ajax. They obviously had a good reason for doing that. Whether or not she was the reason that they decided to gender race bend this character or not, we'll find out. Well, maybe we won't. But I'm really curious how she's gonna be in this. I assume she's gonna have to be. I've said before, she's very up and down in her acting, but this is a really big deal movie for a lot of these people's careers, and she's made it for a good while now. So even with that, I have no doubt that Marvel's going to make sure everyone is at their absolute best. And I don't really know if she's going to be their leader. When they had that scene there, everybody kind of standing out with their costumes, she was the one in the center, and she is the only one who is wearing a kind of helmet or crown thing. So we'll just we'll see how that goes when we get some more information, what we find out. Kumail Nanjiani is playing Kingo. I love him as an actor. He's been in The Big Six Sewer and Lovebirds, which is a hilarious movie that I totally recommend for a fun Friday night or something like that. We know based on, well, honestly, some spoilers that leaked, and also based on context from this trailer, that he's going to be some kind of Bollywood figure out in the modern world. So he is going to be one of the ones who chooses to involve himself more with humans. But then I imagine when shit goes down with Thanos, I imagine characters like him probably just ended up going back to their home or whatever and just kind of waiting things out until something happens and something gets better. In the current comic series, Eternals comic series, he and Kingo and Athena are currently working together to find out who killed Zurus, who is their leader. Was their leader. He's dead right now. And he can't be brought back because the resurrection machine is destroyed because Thanos destroyed it. Surprise! Thanos is back. He's an Eternal. He can do that. Actually, he's a deviant, but he can still do that. Zurus is a character who, as far as I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong, is absent from the movie entirely. I'm not sure what his role has been in the past. I just know in this Eternals run, he was like the big kingy dude. I'm pretty sure he's the guy who had the enormous helmet in the olden days in the comics, who looked kind of robotish, very, very Kirby. But I'm pretty sure that's who that guy was. But anyway, he's as far as I know, Zurus isn't going to be in this. So then we have Sprite, who is going to be played by Leah McHugh, who has been cast. She's a young actress who's been in a number of horror movies, which is interesting in my opinion because of some reasons I'll get on in a second. One thing that I wanted to mention also was Hollywood has a recent trend in movies and TV of giving very, very young children lines that a kid that age would never say and writing it off as just, oh, they're just a special, super smart, super clever kid. They're just a special kid. It's I'm sorry, not every kid in the world is like that. You can't have every kid in every movie be like that. It's just gotten lame at this point. It's become a thing that the media has used so often. I'm tired of it. However, Sprite is a character who does have a reason to be a child who acts very, unusually like that, because she is, millennia old. It's also very worth noting that Sprite isn't always the most, according to the comics, Sprite is not always the most trustworthy person in a room, and has in the past betrayed, killed, and otherwise acted against the interests of the other Eternals in the past. You can see in this trailer her hairdo is very reminiscent of Sprite in the comics, kind of crazy reddish spikes, and we do get a very short clip of Sprite looking very angry, standing among like a lava flow or possibly burnt land or something. So I'm wondering if that is going to be a flashback to less happy days. Maybe what happened with Sprite in the current Eternals comic is Sprite was... the last time Sprite died, they decided not to let Sprite be brought back. So, because they had recently... as a young male child, they had recently, like, tried to kill everybody or something, lost their mind, and, like, tried to destroy everything. So they decided not to bring her back for a while, and then finally when they brought Sprite back, she came back as a young woman, a young, child girl. But still they're still very untrustworthy of her. They're like, you can hang out with us and you can be alive again, but, like... you're on a thin rope, thin ice, thin rope. So that's, I'm very curious if we're gonna have any of that appearing in the movie, or if they're kind of just gonna have Sprite be, I don't know why they wouldn't talk about that, because that's an integral part of the character, so I'm hoping that's something that we're gonna see happening. So we also have Brian Tyree Henry is playing Phastos. He's another actor I really love. He was the character Paperboy in the Atlanta show. If you watched that, I believe it was on FX. He was also in Godzilla vs. Kong and voiced Miles' dad in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. In this series, Phastos is married to a man who is played by an actor called Haz Slyman. Sleeman. In the trailer, we see him using some of his powers in a cool looking clip that would appear to be at their home base or ship or whatever, with Sprite kind of lounging in the background. The powers that the Eternals use all seem to be somewhat unique from one another, unique to each of them. But they have a similar, almost Doctor Strange-like type of circles, lines, and like waves and things. It's much lacier, more delicate than Strange's magic. Almost seems to be build like 2D structures with it. Lots of circles and spindly bits and whatnot. Potentially language is involved. I don't know. I know that kind of shapes and things have been used as language in movies in the past, so maybe. And then in the comic currently, for the character of Phastos, he is a dude who uses a big hammer. He hasn't been super involved in the current Eternal series, which only has 4 issues out so far. But he's been really good with it. What we have seen, little we've seen of him. Actress Lauren Ridloff is playing Makari. I believe is another character that they gender swapped. She has in the past been on The Walking Dead and Wonderstruck. I'm not super familiar with her, but if they put her in this, I have no doubt that she earned it. You see her character Makari in this, mostly, you see her a couple of times zooming through things. She's the one who is the fast runner of the group. You can see her in a room with like fantastic, just room full of amazing looking books, reading at super high speed. No doubt Eternals have just come down, into humanity, and they're like lounging and learning, what humanity's been up to since the last time they came down here, or whatever it is, something like that. I'm honestly not super familiar with the character of Makari from the comics, but they're the fast one, so there you go. Actor Barry Keoghan, it's probably something crazy like Cufin or something, but he's playing Druig. He was in Dunkirk and American Animals. Druig in the comics is, this got me really interested when I opened issue 4 just a little bit ago to confirm I was remembering the right stuff. Druig is a member of an opposing clan. The main Eternals are, like, I believe it is Olympia is where they, like, reign from. He is a member of the Eternals from Polaria. That's Druig. In the current comic, he is not at all on good terms with his fellow Eternals. He's not a deviant, but he is and deviants being basically the opposite of Eternals. They're like Eternals, but they're like the opposites. They're forces of like chaos. Thanos is a part deviant, in a sense. So yeah, in the comic, Druig he's not really on good terms with people. He's known for being untrustworthy, and in this series, he wasn't the initial betrayer of everything that's kind of going on, but he does turn on the other Eternals in issue 4, teaming up with Thanos behind their backs. Clearly gonna be a problem, clearly does not like these other people. He has the ability to control minds, which, there is a clip in this trailer. It's very short, but it's there. It's a bunch of honky looking people, no offense, pulling up their rifles at the exact same time, and I mean the exact same time, and their eyes are glowing white or light blue or something. Not only does this make me think this is what the villain is going to be doing, taking over the minds of humans, hello, Druig controls minds. That's obviously, whether or not he's the main villain, that is obviously a clip of Druig doing some bullshit. So, and you can kind of see it, he's the quiet, solemn type who you kind of, and he's basically wearing a black trench coat. Come on. Which honestly is a pretty decent translation from what he wears in the comics. He is currently vaguely Asian looking in the comic right now, so honestly it's probably a better thing that they didn't make the villain an Asian man, just because that in itself is a really terrible trope. But his suit is he's the only male character, as far as I can tell, in the comic who actually wears like a full-length skirt thingy outside of his pants, and that is accurate to the costume that he wears here in Eternals, as much as we've seen of it so far, at least. We also have Gilgamesh, who is played by Ma Dong-seok, S-E-O-K. He is another great actor. He's in a lot of Korean movies, American movies being Train to Busan. I don't know if Train to Busan is an American movie. Shit. And The Outlaws. There's not a whole lot of him that you see in this trailer, which is a little bit disappointing because he is the one who I'm the least, him and Makari are the ones I'm the least familiar about. And the only thing you really see of him doing in this trailer is, like meditating or something with somebody and touching their hands. I'm not sure if you can tell who the person is. You can kind of assume, though, that this is some experience he's having with a human on Earth. So that's really all I can say about... I don't know anything about the comic character. I don't know anything about what he's doing right now in the comics, unfortunately. Hopefully I will be able to do some research. Well, I'll definitely be able to do some research before November. But not too much to say about Gilgamesh. So those are the main characters. One thing I wanted to add, interestingly, the scene where everybody is laughing about Icarus potentially leading the Avengers, Dane Whitman, Black Knight, is present in that scene. You see him with them. They were eating breakfast earlier on and thanking them for having him here, and Icarus says no problem or whatever it is. But then when he makes that comment, and when it cuts to everybody laughing at the table, he is not there at the table. Now that could obviously be several clips from a 15-minute span of, conversation, and they're taken from 5 minutes apart each, but who knows? I just thought that was kind of interesting that they're talking about who is going to be leading the Avengers while Black Knight is specifically not at the table but is in the scene. Just something to think about. And I know everything I'm saying is making it sound like I think he is going to lead the Avengers. I still think it's gonna be Cersei. Gemma Chan is a big actress, and they had given her a little bit of a tease. They had kind of tested her out in Captain Marvel, and I can't help but think that that was really what they were doing there, and this is them giving her what she has earned by playing that super well in that character. I'm just getting really excited thinking about that because I'm a big fan of Gemma Chan. Obviously, Kit Harington is a good actor and everything as well, and he looks pretty good. They gave him a little bit shorter hair than I think most of us were expecting, which, thank goodness, honestly. Excuse me. We've seen Kit Harington with long hair plenty of time, and I am sure he, unless he's a fan of the long hair, I'm sure he appreciated being able to trim it down quite a bit. Overall, if you can't tell, I think this is going to be a really fun movie. I'm extremely interested to see how Marvel is going to tie it into the main MCU in a way that's going to have the casual, everyday MCU fan who does not read comics, is not familiar with the history of comics, just your casual, everyday, movie-going person who enjoys the MCU movies. How they're going to make this connect in a seamless way. The movie itself, I have no doubt, is going to be really, really good. You have an excellent, completely stellar cast here. It is not a single person here who you could call a weak link in the cast. They are all phenomenal actors. And you have what appears to be really excellent translation to live action from what we see from this trailer. We know we have really good music. We have some tropes that people are really going to get into, such as the whole ancient aliens thing, how they are the Eternals are the ones who were the quote-unquote aliens who taught us all this stuff, when we were stupid little humanoids. It has a lot of those elements that are going to make people really interested. It potentially has a love triangle in it. It has whatever the hell Black Knight is going to end up looking like, which again, can't wait to see what that is. My husband's theory, I don't have a theory myself, but my husband's theory, it's going to be some kind of like shiny, glowy, magic suit, which I could see them going that way. I just... There's no way they're gonna put this man in a suit of armor in the year 2020 something. That would not work. I don't think it would have even worked back in the 70s, if we're being honest. But anyway, this movie has all of the elements to make it work really well as a standalone movie. I'm just super curious how they're gonna make this all tie in seamlessly to the MCU so that we continue to see at least some of these characters afterwards. And obviously, if they bring Gemma Chan into the Avengers, that would be an obvious way to do that. And continue to have the, them in the Avengers type stuff and the rest of the MCU. But as of yet, they're completely brand new. So we have all kinds of things to learn. And this is all just speculation, but goddamn is it fun. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and dull the mood a bit with talking about the horrific movie that was Army of the Dead. And when I look back on this movie, I keep finding myself almost telling people, it's okay, you can watch it, just be really careful with, signs of what's about to happen, because you're probably right, it's probably about to happen and you're not gonna like it, or it's gonna be freaky or whatever, and just ignore the really bad parts. That's a lot to ignore and a lot to not pay attention to. I have a kind of a list here. This movie was a lot of among other really dumb things that happened. It had a lot of harsh, horrifying violence against women. Every single female character in the movie died except for one. And the last time we see her, she shoots her dad in the head after he turns into a zombie. So yeah, they're pretty much tortured through the entire film, and her whole purpose was to save this girl, and turns out that doesn't even happen. So what was the point? And like, it doesn't start well. I have this list of things that go really terribly, but the movie itself does not start off well. It starts in a way that you think you're meeting the characters who are going to be relevant because what is happening. It's basically a like montage of how the outbreak goes, and you get a selection of characters, 3 or 4 characters who you are following through this montage through over the course of what has to be months, if not years. I honestly they don't really let you know in this movie how long this has been going on for. Over the course of some time, how, their experience goes fighting zombies, losing their families, etc. 2 of these characters, one is Dave Bautista, and one is the one of the zombie hunting guys, who is the only black character in the movie, who is an asshole, of course, because that's what, black characters have to be, apparently, according to Zack Snyder. Then the third was this woman, and you're like, okay, so these are the 3 people who we're going to follow through the movie, because they literally have a sequence where the person is standing next to a bunch of dead zombie bodies. There is a backdrop, like a professional photographer is here, and they're holding a photo of the people in their family who they've lost through this whole zombie war, right? So you'd think, like, this is the very beginning of the movie, so you think, okay, these are the characters who we're going to get to know through the movie. No. This woman who believes her daughter is dead, she's having this photo shoot for some reason at the beginning of the movie, in the middle of zombie bodies. One of several people doing that, actually. No, she reunites with her daughter, only to be crushed by a sea train, or a, shipping container at the last second before they escape. So let's go over some of the other harsh, horrifying things that happen in this movie, to avoid if you yourself are watching it, because most of these things you can kind of see coming, with the exception of a few. So, first of all, there is the killing of a pregnant woman. She is a zombie, but she is definitely pregnant. The dissection of that pregnant zombie's body to get to that dead baby. The emotional distress of Dave Bautista's character, very slowly having to stab a knife slowly and loudly into his fresh zombie wife's head while their teenage daughter screams and cries right next to him. Slow decapitation of the pregnant zombie woman while she is screaming and crying. The woman and the daughter getting crushed at the last second. I already told you about that one. Woman getting this was probably the worst one. A woman getting her head twisted around completely backwards, and to the point that her spine pops out of her shoulder. I should also add that this was right after she and Dave Bautista's character had a long, I swear it was 5-minute chat of how when they get out of this, they're gonna they're gonna try again as a couple. And then her head gets twisted around backwards, her spine pops through her neck, or in her shoulder, and she blinks a couple of times. So you're made completely aware that this woman is being tortured while she slowly dies. So that's fun. Then there is women trapped for, it wasn't really seen, but it's strongly alluded that they're trapped here for the Zombie King to rape as he pleases. It is also confirmed that Theo Rossi's character was raping women at this camp for people in need. And then at the end of the movie, there is a woman who is stabbed into a wall with a giant sword as she tries to save her friends. There's also the cliche of the lesbian with short hair who is the mechanic and a pilot, and she ends up getting brutally killed at the end anyway when a wing from her own helicopter, or I guess the one she's flying, gets shoved through her chest. Other bad tropes we had, I already talked about the one black guy who was an asshole. We also had one Asian man who was somehow racist towards Asians. Go figure. But you could see the pain in his eyes when he puts out those lines. It was really depressing. You have the Latina chick also got brutally murdered after getting betrayed several times. You have the she was got the big earrings and the red bandana and everything. It was to a T a cliche. I could go on for quite a bit here. But basically, there are lists, you can find them online. There are lists of things that don't make sense in this movie. And there is stuff that Zack Snyder put in this movie specifically to get the people who got, dick hard about his Snyder cut, to get them to get dick hard about this so that he gets, more money or whatever it is. It's stuff that doesn't make sense, but he put it in here to get people to get crazy about it, to say that he's a genius. He's not a genius. This movie was 100% violence against women. I'm not going to say the mean thing going on in my head, but I'm sure you can kind of figure it out. There is a good number of stuff from this week's comic book pull list that are things I'm behind on, or things that I am collecting until it's completed to read. Is that terrible? I'm still buying, I'm still supporting the series. I'm just gonna wait until I get a big chunk of it to read. So I'm behind on it. But I'll go over those things first because I know they're solid-ass series done by really great writers. And they're really interesting. And just with the amount of stuff that I have, there are certain things that I save until it's complete for various reasons to read. So one of those is Abbott.1973 that is coming out with issue 5 this week. This is the second iteration in the Abbott mythology, I guess. The first series took place a couple of years ago, and this series takes place some years later after that series in 1973. Really excellent series if you're interested in it. It's following a black reporter in 1973 as she is kind of investigating some dark things that are happening in her town related to the last series that ended with the death of her husband. She's also a queer black woman, if that's up your alley. Another series that I'm gathering for later is Bitterroot. Now, Bitterroot has been in the news recently because they officially announced the, I believe, Netflix movie deal for this. I can't recommend this enough. The plot is a monster hunting family in the Harlem Renaissance. If that's not enough to get you interested, I don't know what will. The 3 guys on this team, Sanford Green, I believe, is the artist, and then you have David F. Walker and Chuck Brown as the writers. I believe it was Chuck Brown who I met alongside Sanford Green. Really, really stellar dudes. If you ever see them at a con, I definitely recommend stopping for a minute and talking to them because they're really nice guys. Sanford Green, I bought a Black Panther print from him. It's a connecting cover from I think it was issues 1 through 5 of the Black Panther Ta-Nehisi Coates series. I could be wrong about which series that was, but it was like the first 4 or 5 issues that connected. It is one of the most beautiful prints that I own, and he sold it to me for $20 with a signature on it, which is a great price for con prints that are signed. Phenomenal price. And they're, like I said, really great guys to talk to. I think pretty much whoever you are, they probably have something that would interest you to say. So Bitterroot, that would be one that I would definitely say check out if you are into kind of the sci-fi fantasy from a different perspective than what we might be usually seeing. Black Widow number 7. These are going to be actually, I cut myself off there. I didn't finish talking about the ones that I'm gathering until they finish. Nuclear Family is another one that is by Stephanie Phillips. I am a couple issues behind on that, but I'm still supporting it because the first issue was so good, and it is based on the Philip K. Dick short story Breakfast at Twilight, which I found. I mean, it's Philip K. Dick. You have to be interested in a certain genre of sci-fi, the kind of stuff that they wrote back then, which I, for the most part, am. It's weird. It doesn't necessarily always make sense. It was very much a lot of I am 14 and this is deep stuff. But it was back in the day where that was the first time anybody had ever, made those comments and discoveries and stuff. So, Nuclear Family is really great. If you're into, World War II atomic era kind of mysteries, maybe even all the way up to the fourth Indiana Jones type stuff, that would be one for you to definitely check out. And that, I think, encompasses everything that I am saving to read. Oh, I Breathe the Body. That's another one. That is one by Zack Thompson, which he is the writer of Lonely Receiver, which was a phenomenal trippy series. I Breathe the Body is equally trippy, if not more, with art by Andy McDonald. Technology and post-apocalyptic stuff and society getting back on its feet and social media influencers and harvesting meat and just crazy stuff. This is another one I'm a few issues behind on. It's coming out with issue 5 of... Looks like issue 5 of 5 is the last issue this week, and then I'm going to be reading it all, hopefully this weekend. Zack Thompson, he made me a fan for life with Lonely Receiver, and I Breathe the Body, based on what I've read, the 2 issues that I did read of it so far, is not any different. It is the same level of stellar writing. So then I'll start going through things kind of alphabetically, I suppose, now. Beta Ray Bill number 3 is one that I am extremely excited for this week. You can't... This is I expected one thing from this series, and I got it. I definitely got it. But then it added so much more depth than I was ever expecting. Basically, the series is... Very basically, it's dealing with Beta Ray Bill's unhappiness with his physical appearance. Which is, very clearly not something I think anybody saw coming. I'll read the solicitation here for you, if that's something that you are interested in. Unfortunately, this is only the 5-issue series. Actually, is it 6? It's 5 or 6 issues, I can't remember. But it's been so good, and the first 2 issues have been so good. Here's the solicitation. Bill marches into the heart of darkness. Beta Ray Bill takes a bloody path to find his glory, and the perfect weapon to forge it with. And he's even got a few friends to brave the battle alongside him. But the journey is one with even Odin would call treacherous, and not all of Bill's friends will survive. At least not in the form you know. Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer will break Bill's heart and yours. We already have our hearts broken, guys. This was like... We all used to make fun of Bill for looking the way he does, because he's got the horse face. We would, josh him. We'd roast him about it, Oh my gosh, I feel so terrible for having ever said those things. I know he's a fictional character, but good God. This has already ripped our hearts out and stomped on it. This is gonna get worse. Although I will say the thing about not all Bill's friends will survive, at least not in the form you know. That is no doubt a callback to what is his buddy's name who's with him? Scourge, there we go. I always want to say Krang or something, I don't know why. Scourge. He supposedly, according to Scourge, he has come back from the dead at the insistence of himself to get Bill a lady, more or less. Obviously, it's not how things would go. You're not just gonna get brought back to life because you want to. So that not in the form he's either Loki or he's, something else who can transform. There's no way, he's not Scourge. I would bet money on it, that's not Scourge. But Beta Ray Bill, gosh, so good. Black Widow, it's a Kelly Thompson comic. I talk so much about how great it is. Looking at the cover for this week's issue, we really have to take a second to appreciate the Adam Hughes covers. I know he's done some really good ones before already in this series, but this one is really awesome as well. It's a 9-panel grid of from the point of view of an attacker, someone fighting Black Widow, and she's dodging their punches and their blows and everything, and then the last 3 are her in the process of hitting the person, and then the last panel is just white out with bloody marks. It's really cool, and she's in her new suit. I really like the new suit. She still has the awesome undercut, in my opinion, or side cut. I don't really know what hairstyle it is, but it's a cool hairstyle. And she has a new, not a new sidekick, because they haven't like joined up with her, but she has her sights on somebody to use as a new sidekick, and she also has Yelena Belova still hanging out. So they're probably gonna have some good times together, I'm sure. This, I guess, is the start officially to a new story arc. She is still in San Francisco, which I think is awesome because as I say, every time this comes up, I lived in San Francisco during college. And it's a great city, and I love to see it. It's like the West Coast. It really is like the West Coast New York, but it doesn't get nearly enough credit. I talk a lot about how my favorite indie series, well, my favorite comic series, tend to come from when a quote-unquote big two writer, someone I'm familiar from Marvel or DC, starts doing an indie comic starts doing an indie comic. It's happened a couple of times recently that I've talked about how great that's gone, and now we have Christopher Cantwell making that leap. This is for Vault Comics. It's called The Blue Flame #1. It's with Christopher Cantwell writing, with K. Michael Russell arting, and with someone else. I guess Adam Gorham also arting. I'm not sure who's doing... One's probably doing colors. But anyway, I'll read the solicitation because this is obviously a new series. I don't have a whole lot to say about it myself. It says, "The Blue Flame is a cosmic hero. The Blue Flame is a DIY vigilante that fights crime on the streets of Milwaukee. The Blue Flame is a blue-collar HVAC repairman named Sam Brosm. In the wake of a horrific tragedy, the boundaries of the Blue Flame's identity blur even further. Now, before a universal trial, the Blue Flame must prove that humanity is worth saving. But in order to do that, Sam Brosm has to save himself." So that's, standard superhero kind of stuff. But I am definitely going to be checking it out to see if it latches me on the way that a lot of other, well-known comic writers will put out things that I get really latched onto. Real quick, the Department of Truth isn't one that I plan on catching up with, really, but it's one that I know has been really good. If you're a conspiracy theory fan, which my husband is, and he really digs the series because it is by James Tynion, who I know I have kind of talked crap about in the past, but his indie stuff is more or less way better than his DC stuff, I've kind of been saying about all these writers. And Department of Truth does not give... it will not be satisfying to actual conspiracy theorists who are kind of crackpots. It will probably piss them off. Instead, it shows all these ridiculous conspiracy theories and the kind of truths behind them and how they kind of came into existence, while also having this whole other kind of industry driving it. I don't want to give away too much in case you haven't read it, but it's really good. I read the first 5 or so issues, and I just kind of got behind on it, is why I stopped reading it. We also have Harley Quinn #3 coming out this week alongside Stephanie Phillips' other comic, which was Nuclear Family. Stephanie Phillips writes this with Riley Rossmo on the art. I've really enjoyed this. I keep saying it every time this comic comes out, but it's been one that I haven't had to pretend I liked more than I really liked to get jazzed about it, or to try and get people jazzed about it. I really do like it a whole lot. It's my favorite start to a Harley Quinn series I think I've ever read. It just feels like it's in such a good place for the series to be right now, for the character to be. Even though Harley has a lot of stuff to work on, and a lot of obviously problems going on in her life, this series is at a really good place right now. So definitely check out Harley Quinn if you're a fan of the character, and if you haven't found things in the past that you liked from her, maybe you'll like this one, because I definitely do. Made in Korea #1 is an indie comic coming from Image this week that I decided to get on board with after kind of reading the solicitation. I usually check out at least the solicitation and reviews of indie comics as they come out with a #1 issue to kind of see if that's something I should step onto as well. And this is one that I think it's cool. I don't recognize any of the creators. It's written by Jeremy Holt and arted by George Shaw. Potentially with colors by Adam Willett. But I like the solicitation. It seems kind of interesting. It says, a quick start guide for your proxy. Step 1, remove box. Step 2, power on. Step 3, raise your child. For Jesse, the world's first true AI system, growing up means learning to think outside the box. This exciting new 6-issue miniseries will redefine what it means to be a family in an age when biological parenthood is no longer a reality. A lot of interesting concepts there, from between dystopia to biological parenthood to robots being people to ethics of all kinds. A lot of stuff to look forward to reading about in this series, so I will definitely be checking that out. I have a really good feeling about this one. We also have Monstrous coming out this week from Image. I can't talk about Monstrous very well because it's so complex, but I can't recommend it enough. Everyone I have ever recommended Monstrous to and have actually read it have come back to thank me about it afterwards, because it is a phenomenal series. It's up there with Saga, and if you know Saga, you know that is saying a lot. The world building, the uniqueness of the characters, the villains, the just so much intricate stuff and unique and clever and well done things. Monstrous is a completely one-of-a-kind comic, but it is one of the absolute best out there. Reign of X books coming this week that I will be reading are X-Men and New Mutants. This is the second to last issue of X-Men, which I am kind of sad about. But it is no doubt going to be we're going to get another X-Men issue after that, after issue 21, but it's a new series, and it's going to be written by Gary Duggan, while this is written by Jonathan Hickman. Leaves a lot of questions. Jonathan Hickman, you're the head of X, what are you going off to do? My theory, something with Scarlet Witch, because Artgerm is doing a Scarlet Witch picture, and we have yet to see what it is for, and it's an official cover, so, super spitballing there. But this, I think these last two issues of Hickman's X-Men written series are going to be super, super balls to the wall, a lot of stuff going on, because, A, it's Hickman, and B, we have, Nimrod, who I can't believe is actually the name of a comic book character they still have these days. But you have Nimrod on the cover, and it just says System Online Processing. Obviously, Nimrod is a big, major villain of the X-Men, so him even appearing is not good news. And then we have like a nice fun X-Men team picture on the last issue. So these last two issues are probably going to be really heavy with content, but that's a good thing. New Mutants is been by Vita Ayala, who has absolutely killing it alongside Rod Reese's art. This current arc of the New Mutants series has been following the older, I guess you would say, the original New Mutants, as they are trying to like not rein in necessarily, but like lead the other mutants, the other young New Mutants. A lot of different age groups going on here. They have a young group who's probably the youngest ones who they're training. That's not Bumblebee. Honey Badger. That's who Honey Badger... Well, her name's not Honey Badger anymore. It used to be Honey Badger. It's X-23's clone sister. She's in that youngest group with that new character, Cosmar. And then there's a group of teenagers, who I honestly don't remember who any of they are. And then there's, like, Magic's age group, and they're, like, the leaders of these various New Mutant age groups. And they're teaching the younger kids, all this stuff that they need to know. But the current problem that we have going on is... oh gosh, what is his, Shadow King. Shadow King, I know Farouk is his, what they call him, but Shadow King is his, like, villain name, and he is kind of twisting the training of the youngest group of New Mutants in a way that I'm sure will be problematic going down the line. We also have the Other History of the DC Universe number 4 coming out this month, or this, May, June, okay, yeah, this month. It is... or bi-monthly, I guess how they do that. It is about Renee Montoya, specifically as the Question. Or at least on the cover she is the Question. If you're familiar with if you're not familiar with Renee Montoya, she is of course a queer Gotham detective who has been a member of the Birds of Prey, and as I said, the hero, the Question. So, it says here, one of the lines from the solicitation actually says, as the Question, Renee stood in contrast to society's rigid expectations of her, held up a mirror to the world's face, and asked, "Who are you?" So this is no doubt going to be another really thoughtful, meaningful exploration of a character who doesn't really get that kind of exploration too often, and I'm very excited to see that play out. Robin number 2, second issue, but I was really surprised. Well, yeah, I was pretty surprised to find out how much I liked the first issue. It, of course, ended with Damian basically being put in his place as he is doing this fight to the death, and he's basically telling everybody, "There's no way you could beat me." And then his like current fight partner rips his heart out of his chest. So I have a feeling that he is actually gonna die here, but he's gonna get brought back in the Lazarus pit, and I'm hoping that he's gonna be slightly older. There's no reason for him to be a kid anymore. The only other kid who is his age has been aged up. That was John Kent. Just age him up too, and it'll feel a lot more natural. I'll read the solicitation here. I actually haven't read it myself, so I'll learn some things too with you. After the shocking events of Robin number 1, Damian has learned the deadly rules of Lazarus Island the hard way. Now he must prove that he belongs in the tournament and uncover its secrets. But his only ally is the daughter of one of his greatest enemies, Ravager. In this tournament, only one can fight to get out alive. Ready for round 2, fight. So I don't know, it doesn't really say anything of whether or not he's going to be alive or dead in this, but Rose Wilson showing up as Ravager. She is, of course, Wade Wilson's daughter, Deathstroke, so she and her father have a tricky history, but it'll be kind of interesting to see what her motives are involving with Damian specifically in this series. There is also a Spawn issue coming out this week, but we'll see if it ends up being something that actually has She-Spawn in it or not. It's supposed to be the one that kicks off the Spawn universe, so I guess I'll be picking that up because I'm interested in the Spawn universe, specifically the stuff that are other writers, but we'll see. Finally, we have Strange Adventures number 10, which is a Tom King series with dueling art by Mitch Gerads and Evan Shaner. Otherwise known as Doc Shaner. This has been a delight. I can definitely see how a lot of people might do better with this series the way that I do when I take things and I read them all as a whole once it all comes out, or, as collected edition, whatever the case may be. Because it is a giant mystery, as a lot of the Tom King stuff is. Where we've gotten so many twists and turns along this. There's 2 more issues left after this one, and yet we're not quite sure what even is the reality of the situation yet. We get from the Mitch Gerads perspective and his art, we see things that are happening more currently in the DC universe, with specifically Mr. Terrific at the behest of the Justice League, trying to see if Adam Strange or his wife, or more specifically just Adam Strange, was committed war crimes on the Picts, who were the ones who he battled, and there was this whole drama about. That's the whole plot of the series. On the Evan Shaner art side of things, we see that backstory. However, much of that backstory, the way that it is playing out and the order of things playing out, do not line up with the way that we assume things are originally. So there's a lot of mystery happening here. There's a lot of stuff yet to be revealed, and I'm really, really excited to see what that is. My theory right now, currently, is that Adam Strange did something to he and Alana's daughter, possibly turned her over to the Picts to end the war, possibly gave Earth up to them somehow, as we know that they are currently attacking Earth, and the city of Phoenix is completely gone now, thanks to them. So there's a lot of things going on, and I'm super stoked to see how this ends. And that wraps up this week's episode, or today's episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Thank you so much for listening along if you have made it this far into the podcast. I always appreciate any amount of listening anybody does, so definitely keep doing that, I guess. I will be back this coming Friday, the 28th of May, for episode 19B, where I'll be talking about comic book picks. things that I really enjoyed from this week's comic books and pull lists and things that I find that I didn't originally think were going to be good or whatever. We'll be talking about that on Friday, and I'll also be talking about potentially some superhero shows and things that are going on. I was supposed to talk about the Bad Batch episode 4 today, so I'll talk about that on Friday as well, because I kind of got caught up with the Eternals trailer, which, you know, is great, obviously. So I'll talk about Bad Batch episode 4 on Friday, as well as whatever pop culture news, speculation, updates, and things relating with comics and the comics industry happen between now and then. You can find me online. I have a website, sensationalshegeek.weebly.com. You have to have the Weebly extension in there or else you won't get anywhere. My Instagram, if you want to find me on social media, is Anna with the Comics. I post only about comic book stuff, and comic book figure stuff. It's only ever related to comics and sometimes my cat. And then we have, let's see, on Twitter you can find me at Savage She-Geek, because sensational was too many letters. I also have a TikTok, but I don't really think that's the demographic who listens to this podcast. I also don't really use it, so good luck with that if you're interested in TikTok, I guess. The more followers I get, the more I'll be interested in posting stuff. That's how it always goes, right? Thank you again for listening to this week's podcast. As I said, I will be back this Friday for episode 19B on Friday the 28th, and hopefully I will have things better plotted out to say without jumbling over my words. In the meantime, have an excellent week. Keep your head on straight, and don't forget to get sweaty about the things that you love.